fellow watchers. Today, this is going to be my first podcast episode, unedited. And we're going to talk about, the name of it is Deconstruction is not what you think it is. It's not a threat. Deconstruction is about asking questions and examining what you believe. And if your faith demands silence, it may not be true. True faith doesn't fear questions. Truth doesn't fear questions. But if it does, it's probably not true. And I'm here to encourage people to re examine their beliefs, not here to rip down anyone's faith. Um, I think that everybody should do this. I don't care if you're spiritual, a Buddhist, it doesn't matter. Think about what you believe. Actually examine it. Because are you sure you know what you're actually believing? There's no real harm in deconstruction. Actually, it's the most healthiest thing that you can do as a person, you know? Um, I think a lot of the time people very much mix deconstruction with rebellion, sinfulness. It's like the most ultimate sin, but that's not true. Re examining your beliefs should never be a sin, ever. And I think if you have a good perception of God, that wouldn't matter. But I'm here to basically tear down unhealthy faith and bring people back to healthy faith or bring people to whatever they believe. I believe in healthy faith. And me as a spiritualist, I can extend that gratitude to other Christians that a lot of them cannot extend to me as a spiritualist. But I will not become the people that hurt me. So I'm going to be different in bringing this. I'm not against religion if it is for you. I'm only against it when it becomes everyone else's problem, like the Crusades. Um, I'm against hypocrisy. I'm against condemning others. And I'm against spiritual manipulation. So, this is why I want to talk about this topic. But what's the first thing about deconstruction anyways? How do we know where we are in deconstruction? Number 1, it's about asking genuine questions. A lot of people, and in my case, was given Christianity or any other religion, and instead of examining these beliefs, you were told this is absolute truth, do not question it. That's manipulation. That's not truth. And that is not honesty. Truth and honesty doesn't begin with silence. It begins with questions. It begins with questions. And a lot of the time, this belief is pushed on the children because children can't think for themselves. Children are going to believe their parents over anything. Children are going to believe what their family says, what another adult says, what an authority says. And so a lot of the time, religion gets popular not because people actually choose it, but because they were told this is the truth. I don't know if you hear this today, but some people actually accept Christianity because that's all they know. I've heard a lot of people say, I've asked people, what do you believe? And they'll say Christianity because I grew up with it. That's it. Um, and there's no questions. There's no examining your beliefs. There's nothing. You're just thrown in the pit. And a lot of people are afraid to leave because that's all they know. But I'm here to tell you that it is very healthy to question. And when you question, that doesn't mean that you're leaving your faith or that you're disobeying God, okay? I feel like a lot of people have different perceptions of God, but my perception of God is a little different. Actually, a lot of different. I believe that God is within us all. I believe that we're all a part of the universe. I believe that we're all a part of nature, and I believe that's God. And to me, a lot of people kind of use God as like a label of like something that humans can't reach. But for me, God is just another word for high frequency. I don't see it as something above me or, anything like that. I see it as one with me. But a lot of people see God as separate from them, and that's okay. Um, but a lot of people, when they're taught about God, they're given a perception of fear. They're giving a perception of never question, never think, never judge, never disagree. And that's harmful because I believe that sometimes we're given the wrong image of what God truly is, or we're just given the wrong image for control. But questioning is not a threat, not to truth. And if you ever feel like you can't ask questions, if you feel like you can't doubt your faith, if you feel like you can't step outside of what you believe and explore, you're being controlled. That's not salvation. That's not healing. That is manipulation and that is control. And a lot of churches promote this all the time. Um, I would like to say, as somebody who grew up in unhealthy faith, I do realize that there's healthy places, healthy churches, healthy people, but not everybody's healthy. And I think the same thing about spirituality. And that's another topic that I would like to touch bases on here too. I think that there's a lot of unhealthiness as far as the spiritual community, as far as the religious community. And I'm here to point it out. And I'm here to point it out from experience, being on the other side of that, and being a part of it. So, you know, I'm not a hypocrite. But yeah, so let's move on to the next thing about deconstruction. I have my notes right here, but you know, a lot of people, so we've already kind of gotten to questions, but a lot of people have a misconception surrounding deconstruction that honestly stops them from deconstructing, period. And they believe it's like wrong to do. And so, another part of deconstruction is actually understanding what you believe. So, a lot of people were given Christianity and they didn't understand it at all. And I was one of those people. I didn't understand Christianity too much. I was just told this everything from beginning to end literally happened and that's it. That's all you need to know. Everything's true. But I never really got to examine what I believed. So I secretly started to. I started reading like, different books and everything. And I also started to search outside of what I was taught. I was taught to be afraid of the occult. I mean, as you can see, I'm no longer afraid. But I was taught to be afraid of the occult. I was taught to be afraid of astrology. I was taught to be afraid of energy. I was taught to be afraid of space. No damn moons, no stars, no nothing. Just be afraid of everything. That's not God. Don't ask questions from another human, ask God. And it wasn't working for me because I realized this wasn't the human thing to do. As a human, we deserve to look outside of what we were taught. And as a human, we deserve to re examine our beliefs. A lot of people that deconstruct, I do want to say, actually come back to the faith and redefine their faith and redefine their image of God. Okay? When you're living in unhealthy faith and you're told that God will do this and that to you, yeah, it's going to scare you, especially as a kid. If you're told that you're going to go to hell for doing this and that, yeah, you're going to be scared. And even as a grown adult that can fully make any other choices, you're going to be terrified. It doesn't matter, right? Because what you were told as a kid is going to be stuck with you. And we all know that our childhood plays a huge part in who we are today. And so, yeah, if you're given the wrong image of God, if you're given the fear of God over the love, you're never going to really see the truth. One thing about fear is to me an illusion. I think that fear is something that we create in our minds. But fear is not truth. People mistake it for clarity, and they're two different things. Clarity brings calmness. Fear will bring anxiety. Fear will bring worry. Fear will bring overthinking. But clarity is just knowing without having to overanalyze everything. With fear, you have to overanalyze everything. You have to overexamine. But clarity gives it to you straightforward. And there's nothing to worry about when it comes to clarity. But re examining your beliefs is extremely important because you need to understand what you believe. A lot of people claim to be Christian, but they do not understand what they believe at all. And I'm not talking about just your own interpretation to justify the harm that has been done within or without the Bible. But I'm talking actually looking at this at face value, reading it the way it was written, and actually see, like, okay, this is something that I didn't understand before. I think the Bible is a pretty big book. And I actually have my Bible right here, and I have full of different notes. And as somebody who deconstructs, just because Christianity was home to me at one point, I still read, I still acknowledge, and I still try to break down what exactly I believed. You know what I mean? And I think everybody should do that. Like, it doesn't matter what you believe, like, everybody should look into that. But I feel like I was touching on a topic, but I kind of forget where I was going with this. But yeah, basically, like, a lot of people kind of read the Bible, and they they feel like in order to be a good Christian, you have to believe in every single thing, and that's not true. You don't have to justify the wrongdoing in the Bible to be a Christian. I know plenty of Christians that are like, hey, I disagree with that in a literal sense. That's not something that I would stand for. I just use the Bible as a guidebook to a certain degree, but it's not something that I have to embrace wholeheartedly to believe in my God. And I respect that. Versus saying, like, I read the entire Bible front to back and I accept everything, slavery, rape, genocide, everything, and I have no problem with it, etc. Like, no. When you are following a leader, you shouldn't follow a leader out of fear. You should follow a leader out of respect. And a lot of people don't ask themselves this question, but this is something that I've asked myself in my deconstruction process. I asked myself, if I didn't fear God, would I believe in God? No, I wouldn't. If I feared hell, would I be going to church? If I didn't fear hell, would I be going to church? If I didn't fear God, would I be? No, I wouldn't. Like, this would not be anything to me. So that's one of the questions that I asked that actually got me to deconstruct, because I'm like, I fear God. That's the only reason I'm here. I'm not here because I actually want to be. I'm here because I'm scared. And that doesn't mean that you lose your faith. For me, I rather believe in knowing than faith. That's just my personal, that's me. But for some people, they redefine their faith with the love of God. Instead of fearing God, they know, okay, God doesn't God doesn't need to be this big scary demon, right? God can be someone who loves you without being scared. Like, you don't have to be scared, right? Like, God doesn't have to be an abusive parent to you where it's like, okay, if I disagree, God's going to kill me. Like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. And that's how some people redefine their faith. And that's how some people become, better Christians. But here's a list of questions that I've asked myself and that I think maybe you should ask yourself as well. So, number one, do I believe this because I genuinely believe it? That's important. Two, is it because, oh, I'm sorry, hold on. There was actually a mix up. Okay. Did I actually believe this because I genuinely believed it or because I was afraid of going to hell? That's one of the questions I asked myself. And if your answer is no, and I'm literally telling you to remove the fear. Remove the fear. Really ask yourself this question genuinely. Because if I'm being honest to you, if you lie to yourself, you know you're lying to yourself. Ask yourself the genuine question. No one's watching. You know what I mean? The next question is, did I believe it because it resonated with me? I didn't believe this because it resonated with me. I believed it because I was terrified. That's it. Like, I didn't believe it because it was actually helping me. I believed it because this is what I was taught to believe. Um, is questioning considered sinful? If questioning is considered sinful, that's not faith. That's control. Did I believe it because I personally had experienced it, or because an authority figure told me it was true? Now, I want to separate this one because a lot of people like to say, I did feel it, I did feel it. But my thing is, sometimes when you are in a group with people who feel the same things, it gets amplified and it gets intense. But another question that you can ask as far as experiencing it, are you actually healing? Is this bringing the best out of you? Is this ruining other relationships? Is this ruining relationships with you and your children? Is this something that is bringing clarity to you? And what do you do with this information? Do you bring clarity to others, or are you spiritually abusing others? Because 9 times out of 10, if you are spiritually abusing others, condemning others, you're not really sitting in faith, you're sitting in fear. And I want to make this clear. Once again, I'm not here to destroy faith. I'm here to help you restore it or find something that is meant for you. I'm not against religion at all. I'm only against hypocrisy. I'm against abuse. That's it. And I think that asking yourself these questions can genuinely open the door for a stronger faith or a stronger desire to be someone that you truly want to be. The biggest thing about deconstruction is it allows you to separate what you genuinely believe versus what you were conditioned to believe. And that's important. It's extremely important. And a lot of people don't really know how important that is, right? But let's also talk about something else in deconstruction. Deconstruction is not easy. It's messy as fuck, okay? When I first started deconstructing, first of all, when I deconstructed the first time, my first time ever, I cried. I didn't want to let Christianity go. And I actually identified as a spiritual Christian because I was battling between spirituality and Christianity. But I couldn't have both. I realized that. I couldn't have both because the values of Christianity doesn't hold the same values of spirituality. And I'm not here to say that one's better than the other, but for me, one worked better than the other, right? And basically, as like I was holding on to these beliefs, I was like, I actually had to come to a realization. I'm like, I'm gonna put this down. I don't think I know who God is. I don't think this is the right version. And I need to go on a journey by myself. I need to figure this out. And if Christianity was meant for me, I will come back. But if it is not, I will be pushed further away. And I trusted myself and I trusted my journey. And that's another part of deconstruction that we'll talk about probably in a different episode. Trusting yourself. They tell you not to lean on your own understanding because if you do, you will be led somewhere other than what they're teaching you. They tell you not to lean on your own understanding because independence threatens control. And that's something that I also learned. But before we get into that, because I don't want to, I can talk forever. Trust me, I can go in loops all day, every day, okay? But as I, deconstructed, I asked myself, I was like, hold on, can I do this? I was super scared. I thought the moment that I touched a different topic, I'd go to hell like that. I felt so much guilt. I thought God was mad at me. I legitimately was like, I'm literally going to hell. It's over. Like, it's over for me. You know what I mean? And as I started to like kind of slowly phase out of Christianity, I was like, I gotta be honest with myself. I need to go on this journey personally. And like I said, if it's meant for me, it's meant. If it's not, it's not. As I went on this journey, I went through a psychosis. Now, I want to say this. I went through religious psychosis as well as a spiritual psychosis. And I think that the first time anybody that becomes spiritual will go through a psychosis. It doesn't matter. Like spirituality, when you first like step into it, a lot of people don't understand it, and I didn't understand it at first. And so I thought everything was just spiritual, and I didn't really know how powerful I was as a human being. And so there would be certain things that would happen and I would be like, this is spiritual, it's a sign, it's a sign. When in reality, I was just going through a psychosis. But everybody kind of goes through a spiritual psychosis. I really think that's one of the signs of being spiritual. When you're going through a spiritual awakening, you go through a psychosis. You legitimately lose your fucking mind to find it. But as I went on this journey, something happened, and it brought me to myself again. I had a spiritual awakening, and not in the way that you think, okay? This spiritual awakening forced me to actually examine everything that I've been taught and walk away from what no longer fulfills me. I watched my world legitimately crumble. I watched my faith crumble in front of my eyes. I watched everything that I was conditioned to believe crumble in front of my eyes. The way that I communicated, the way I showed up in everyday life, the way that I thought, the way that I felt, everything just crumbled in front of me. And I actually really, really had to sit back and lose my mind to find myself again. But it's a process that's hard. It's actually hard to explain. And it's really not it's messy. It's messy as fuck. For some people, they have a spiritual awakening, and that leads to their deconstruction. But I think deconstruction in itself is a spiritual awakening. The whole point of a spiritual awakening, and I have my notes here, so yes, I'm looking down. A spiritual awakening is a period when you begin to question the way that you understood yourself, reality, spirituality, your beliefs, and you start becoming more conscious of what actually feels true to you. Not fucking easy. It's messy as hell, okay? I was very much in tears when this happened to me, okay? Um, Leaving Christianity was the hardest thing I've ever done, like as far as identity wise. I had to rebuild my identity from scratch. I had to redefine God in the way that I felt was true. I had to step away from those who were still being conditioned. And that's hard. I've lost relationships. I've lost people like, that really meant a lot to me over my deconstruction or even just thinking differently. This shit costs you a lot in your life. It's not easy. People think that you wake up one day and you just rebel against God. No, no, no. It's something that happens to you. And a lot of people will say that's the devil. The devil is only a cover up to make you fearful of changing. That's it. But anyways, here's the stages that I went through in the spiritual awakening as well as the deconstruction process. Number one, discomfort. You start to feel like you don't believe this anymore. Why was I taught this? Why did I go my entire life believing this way? Why am I living according to everyone else's expectations? And as you start to question, you go down a rabbit hole. This discomfort can bring up anger, frustration, hate, resentment. For me, I resented Christianity. I hated it. I hated everything about it. I hated the people. I hated the Bible. I hated God. I hated Jesus. I hated everything. And I had to be honest with myself. I felt like I was ripped the fuck off my entire life. Nobody actually taught me how to heal. Nobody actually taught me how to love myself. Nobody actually taught me how to be the best person I could be. I felt like I was robbed of the years that I was supposed to learn these things. And I was just told, go to God, go to God, go to God, all while ignoring my mental health. And this is why I say unhealthy faith is extremely traumatizing and it can do a lot of psychological damage. Because when you think you need to go to a pastor, when you really need a mental evaluation, when you really need help, it can hurt you mentally and it can hurt the people around you. It can hurt your children. It can hurt your family. It can hurt your friends. It can hurt you. You know what I mean? And at first, I did resent Christianity. I will 100% say that. You will go through a grieving process when it comes to Christianity. But that's only the start. And as someone who has worked on myself enough to even be able to sit here and say that healthy faith exists, just know it took a lot to get here. It took a lot to get here. There are definitely some times where I still struggle with Christianity as a whole. But there's other times where I struggle with the people as well. And sometimes I think they're all the same. But I have a lot of friends that show me otherwise. And so I no longer hate all Christians. I no longer hate Christianity. I do got a problem with it. But I think that's something that you have to be honest with yourself about. It's a grieving process, right? Okay. Number two is the questioning. You start to examine everything, literally everything. Deconstruction has nothing to do with just religion, but this is what the podcast episode is going to be about. But you deconstruct everything. You deconstruct what you were taught as a kid. You deconstructed how your parents handled your discipline. You deconstruct how you became to know things as a person, right? Instead of automatically accepting things, you actually question, is this something that's realistic for me? But here's a lot of things that it may include. You may question religion, spirituality, relationships, your identity, your purpose, or even the way that you have been taught to understand yourself. Now, I want to highlight relationships because then you start to question the relationships with your parent as well. And this is why I talk a lot about parental stuff as well, because some of us lived in unhealthy households, and a lot of us that did also lived in a Christian household. Notice that? So I began questioning my relationships. I questioned, is my parents really handling this the correct way? Am I being abused? And for a while, I didn't think I was, actually. I literally didn't think I was at all until I really started to look deeper. And I was like, This is not what a parent's supposed to do. This is not love, right? At this stage, it can be extremely uncomfortable because suddenly you have to figure out your life again. You don't have the answers. With Christianity, you felt like you had all the answers. With growing up, you felt like you had all the answers. But now you're starting back at level 1. Okay? Number 3, the shedding. This is where you start to let go. This is the hardest part. The old beliefs, the old identity, the old relationships, the old patterns, the old fears. A lot of people think that spirituality and deconstruction is about aesthetic. It's about tarot. It's about Ouija boards. It's about occult items. It's not. It's about a personal experience. And I actually do want to make a separate video about the spiritual awakening. But it is literally not something that you can tell to a person who hasn't been able to examine themselves. You can't tell this to a self-aware person or a person that's not self-aware. If a person's self-aware, they can understand exactly what I'm saying right now. If you can't understand what I'm saying, you're not aware enough. And that's not an attack, but that's the truth. Because anybody that, if you can hear what I'm saying right now, you'll understand because you went through this. But if you have never questioned yourself or your beliefs or how you grew up or anything, you ain't gonna understand what I'm saying. But you start to realize, I don't want these things anymore. You become lonely. It's an isolation process as well when you're deconstructing. A lot of people talk about how it's hard to be a Jesus follower. It's a lot harder. I guarantee you, it's a lot harder to be someone who doesn't follow Jesus. It's a lot harder in that aspect. Sorry, but I'm judging on that one. I'm just being honest and raw. But it's hard to be this person because when you start to shed everything, sometimes no contact with your parents comes in. Sometimes no contact with your family comes in. Sometimes you just isolate yourself completely. And this can become dangerous, I want to say. Okay, the solitude. You may naturally want more time alone. This is kind of what we were just already talking about. Not necessarily because you dislike people, but because you're trying to hear your own thoughts. You're trying to slow everything down and actually pay attention. So you're stepping away from everyone's opinions. You're stepping away from everyone's, you're stepping away from the outside world and you're turning it off to listen to yourself. And this is where you might pick up tarot, you might pick up divination of some kind, you might meditate, you might write things down, but you're more focused on trying to understand yourself. Number 5, the intuition becomes louder. You start paying closer attention to your inner knowing. You might notice something about this doesn't feel right. Or I don't know why, but I feel like I'm supposed to go this direction. Now, the intuition part is very strong. This is where you have to tune people out. Because a lot of people are going to tell you, this is the devil. This is like on my journey, everybody, you're going the devil's way. This is the devil, this is the devil, this is the devil. But I'm hearing this from people who have never examined themselves a day in their life. I'm hearing this from people who are still insecure. I'm hearing this from people who have yet to change from who they used to be. They're the same person they were 20 years ago. So I stopped listening to those people. And I stopped listening to the whole devil thing because it's not true. It's just not, okay? When I started to listen to my intuition, it pulled me in a lot of different areas. I remember at this time I was very heartbroken and I was looking for love actually. And I could never find it. Tarot, this deck right here actually is the one that held me accountable. I remember like pulling the spiritual deck, trying to see like, am I supposed to be with this person? And the deck kept saying no, and I ain't like no for an answer. But then like, I got like the lover's card eventually, and it was showing me like, somebody's basically gonna come into your future. Didn't believe it. And then 3 years later I got married. Imagine that, right? But anyways, that's a different story. But my point is, following my intuition got me into good places. Following my intuition met my husband. Following my intuition has got me to be here today. Following my intuition has helped me be a voice for others. Following my intuition got me where I wanted to go. Follow your intuition, always. Okay? And I'm not talking about your anxiety, your overthinking, I'm talking about your guts. There's a difference. We'll talk more about that too. God, there's so much I want to talk about. Okay. Number 6, synchronicities start feeling meaningful. Now you got to be careful with this one because this is where I went into psychosis. Everybody start to think every single thing that you see is a sign. It's not true. But you may start to notice reoccurring numbers, symbols, dreams, songs, tarot cards, maybe themes, unexpected coincidences, different occult items, whatever the case may be. But you'll start to see reoccurring things, reoccurring patterns. It's not always. It's okay. This could be between spiritual. This can feel spiritual, but it is not spiritual. The reason you're doing this is because your awareness has narrowed in on everything. You're super aware of yourself now, that you're super aware of your surroundings. And so these things have always been there. You can just see it now. And this is why they say perception is everything. Instead of automatically dismissing them, you say, why does this feel significant? And this is where the spiritual part comes in. Okay, the identity shift. Wait, I'm not who I thought I was, right? Wait, this is not me. Wait, those things I used to believe weren't me. And that's the part that I struggle with a lot because I did not have an identity when I was a Christian. I was just a Christian. Like, I wasn't me. Like, you know what I mean? And so a lot of the reason I call myself Lixie Universe is because I started to build my identity surrounding that. Not around spirituality, not around, but more so of what I wanted to bring to the world, right? I stopped identifying with the religion, which is why I do not like labels. This is why I don't like labels. But, you know, I stopped identifying with a religion or some sort of label, and I started to put my own definition to myself. And I'm still working on that. I don't have it all together. I will never say that. But that's something that kind of got me to really think about that, right? But it's very terrifying. It's extremely terrifying, okay? You may start to ask, who am I without my religion? Who am I with other people's expectations? What do I believe? What actually matters to me? And what kind of person do I want to become? But then we have number 8, integration. This is the part where people forget, if that makes sense. This is the part where people forget, okay? But awakening isn't about having realizations. It's about changing how you live. And this is one that I still struggle with as well. And there's a lot of different things that I still need to change. Um, but you take what you've learned and you start to make different choices. You stop becoming the likable person. You become someone who looks rebellious. You look crazy for saying the truth. You might even get labeled. Okay? I got labeled a lot when I start to speak up against religion. A lot. I can't even begin to tell you things that I've been labeled, but I'm gonna keep it personal. Maybe we'll talk about that in a different episode. Who knows, right? But I got seen differently. And some people thought I was immoral. Like, you know what I mean? But I started to establish boundaries. I started to trust myself more. And I released a lot of things that weren't aligned with me anymore, even if it was hard. And I became more intentional about my life. And that's something that I think is important. And this doesn't mean that you have a complete reset and you're perfect right off bat. No, I don't agree with that. But I think it's more looking at the fact of you start to make little changes piece by piece. And for me, boundaries was hard, but it got there. I started realizing that love, just because I love somebody doesn't mean I can't set boundaries. And actually, my husband taught me that. Like, my husband is like the first person that I've ever met to be honest, to feel comfortable to set a boundary with, But you also kind of realize at the stage that you don't need everything. You don't need to know everything right now, right? A spiritual awakening doesn't mean waking up one morning and just suddenly becoming a different person or knowing the secrets of the universe, right? But it's a journey, okay? Sometimes it looks like, realizing that life is different now that you have changed. And it also is realizing that you live someone else's life. You weren't living your life. Spirituality is about reclaiming your power, taking back your power and being the person that you want to be. And that's the whole point of deconstruction. Deconstruction and spirituality very much goes hand in hand. You can deconstruct as a Christian. You can deconstruct as a Buddhist. You can deconstruct as a Satanist. You can deconstruct in a lot of different ways. I mean, you know what I mean? But the most important thing is, are you living for you? Are you living the way that you want? Are you living the way that's true for you? Are you living something you understand? And that's the whole point. But I think this sums up the podcast for today. Thank you for joining if you got this far in my video. I'm going to link my social media in the description as well. And I really do appreciate everyone that, has been supporting me, especially through TikTok, Instagram. I don't really, Facebook's not my strong suit, but I really appreciate you all for being here and everything. And I want to have more unfiltered conversations about deconstruction because I think people really misconstrued it. Deconstruction doesn't mean you're against Christianity. Unfortunately, for some people like myself, oh, okay. Unfortunately, deconstruction can be a way to let go of faith. You know what I mean? But deconstruction isn't against it. It's only against what no longer serves you. That's it. That's all. But thank you so much for joining me in this video, and I really hope that you like it. If you do like this video, please subscribe, comment, let me know your deconstruction journey if you're on one, or if you're thinking about being on one. I also have a deconstruction guide. Link is in the description. It is free because I think deconstruction should be free. And without further ado, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. And I'll see you guys again in the next episode. Bye.